So the problem that we are going to solve today is that of a cantilever beam. Okay, so here is the beam, so this is the beam. Now this beam is being subjected to a distributed load Q naught. Okay, so a distributed load Q naught. So what will be the unit of Q naught if it is distributed load?
Newton per meter.
So
Newton per meter.
yeah, so that it's a distributed load, so the unit is going to be in Newton per meter, and it is subjected to a concentrated load F at the free end and a bending moment m naught once again at the free end. Now we are going to assume Euler-Bernoulli beam theory in order to study the deformation of the beam. So anybody, can you tell me as to what is the significance of assuming Euler-Bernoulli beam theory? You must have studied beam bending in one of your UG courses, right? So what is the significance of Euler-Bernoulli beam theory?
The problem becomes one dimension.
No, that is there, but so in Euler-Bernoulli beam theory, what we assume is that sections perpendicular to the neutral axis continue to remain perpendicular. Okay, so what is the meaning of that? So for example, if I am considering, let us say, a beam element which looks like this to begin with, okay, and if I am going to look at how this is going to look like in, so let us say this is the neutral axis in the initial configuration. Now let us say the neutral axis in the deformed configuration looks something like this. The section, as far as the section is concerned, the section as far as the section is concerned, sorry, I didn't draw this correctly. Let me redraw. So this is a section of the beam, okay, not the whole beam, it's a section of the beam. The dashed line is the neutral axis, okay. So you are taking, so let us say this length over here is dx, from here to here the length is dx, okay. Now in the deformed configuration, if this is the neutral axis, then what we assume is that this particular section over here is getting transformed to this particular section over here is getting transformed to this, okay, and we are assuming that these sections which were initially perpendicular to the neutral axis will continue to remain perpendicular, okay. Now if this is the case, that these angles do not change, then what kind of a deformation are we assuming? What kind of it? We are assuming pure bending. Why is that so? If you take a material element which looks like this, in 2D, what are the kind of deformations it can undergo? It can undergo elongation like this, elongation like this, or it can undergo a shear deformation like this, okay. Now if it undergoes shear deformation, then what will happen to the angle between the two edges over here? From 90 degrees it is going to become something else. If it is okay, it is going to become something else, it's going to deviate from 90 degrees. If the angle between two perpendicular edges is not changing, then that means that you are assuming the shear deformation to be 0, okay. So this is the basic assumption in Euler-Bernoulli beam theory. So all you are saying is that the deformation is coming in from bending only. So any case, so the governing differential equations in this equation in this particular problem is given by d square by dx square ei d square w by dx square minus q naught equal to 0. What is the highest order derivative in this particular equation?
4.
4.
Okay, so the highest order derivative is 4. Now, so just remember one thing, whenever you are dealing with bending, that too bending of Euler-Bernoulli type, the governing differential equations are going to be of 4th order. Otherwise, in general, you are going to deal with 2nd order differential equations. Okay. So this is the governing equation, and what is the domain? The domain of the problem is 0 less than x less than L. This is the domain of the problem. Means this is the region where the differential equation has to be valid. And what are the boundary conditions? At the fixed end, deflection and slope are 0. So if deflection and slope are 0, then what will be the boundary condition? W at 0 is 0, slope, which is dw by dx at x equal to 0 is 0, and then you have a condition for at x equal to L. What condition do you have? You have a condition for the moment and the force. Okay, so you are imposing some moment and force at x equal to L. So those will be the boundary conditions at x equal to L. So this is the problem that we want to solve. So any problem, it's going to have a differential equation. In this case, this is the differential equation. The differential equation will have to be satisfied over some domain. In this problem, 0 to L is the domain, and you will have to satisfy some boundary conditions, and these are the boundary conditions in this particular problem. Now the problem is defined, and what is it that we have to solve for?
Displacement.
Okay, so what we want to finally solve for is w of x. Okay, this is what we want to obtain. So this is the field variable that we are interested in obtaining. Okay, this is the field variable that we want to obtain. Okay, so fine. So what we are going to do is we are going to obtain an approximate solution to this problem using the Rayleigh-Ritz method. We are going to obtain n parameter approximate solution using the Rayleigh-Ritz method. Now, so what is the basic thinking in any of the variational methods? In any of the variational methods, what are we doing? So we either satisfy the weighted integral statement or the weak form statement. In the Rayleigh-Ritz method, we are going to satisfy the weak form statement for some set of weight functions. Okay. Now in this problem, what we are going to do is because we are using W for deflections, we are going to denote the weight function by V of x. Okay. So we are going to denote the weight function by V of x, or what is the physical interpretation of V of x? So V of x is going to be interpreted as variation in the vertical or transverse deflection in this particular case. Now, so please remember that wherever okay, it's going to be the V of x will have the interpretation of variation of deflection W. Okay. Now, okay, so we have to get the weak form statement before we can apply the Rayleigh-Ritz method. To get the weak form statement, we first need to obtain the weighted integral statement. So what is the weighted integral statement in this problem? So in this problem, it is simply integral over the domain. What is the domain? 0 to L is the domain. Integral over the domain of weight function, in this case weight function is V of x, multiplied by the residual. What is residual? Bringing all terms in governing differential equation to one side, we call that as residual. here it is d square by dx square of ei into d square w by dx square minus q naught. This is residual. So weight function into residual integrated over the domain must be equal to 0. This is the weighted integral statement, very straightforward. Then in order to get the weak form, we have to do integration by parts. Okay. Now here currently, what is the order of derivative on the weight function in the weighted integral statement?
One.
Zero.
Oh, sorry. Zero, sir.
Zero. Okay, so to begin with, the order of derivative on weight function is 0 and the order of derivative on the deflection field W is 4. Okay, the highest order is 4. Now when we are going to get weak form, how many times should we do integration by parts so that we can get same order of derivative on weight function and W?
2 times.
We have to do integration by parts twice. Okay, all right, so let us do it. So first we will do integration. Yeah, tell me.
Sir, what if the highest order is an odd number?
Highest order will never be odd. So in any physical problem that you are going to take, you are always going to end up with even order differential equations. In case you do not get, I don't know, if you have some weird formulation in which you get odd number, then fine, means you can do weak form, but the weak form will not have even order derivatives for weight function and field variable. But as long as you are dealing with even order derivatives for your field variable, you want to do integration by parts in a manner that you end up with same order of derivative on your weight function and your field variable. Okay. So in this case, when we do the integration by parts for the first time, what will happen? Any time you transfer the derivative, so I am going to transfer 1 d by dx onto v. So anytime you transfer the derivative, what happens? There is a change in sign. So first time you do it, what will you end up with? Integral 0 to L minus dv by dx into d by dx of ei into d square w by dx square minus q naught by dx. Okay, this is the integral term. You are also going to get a boundary term. What will be the boundary term? It will be no change of sign, which is plus v into, you remove one derivative, d by dx of ei into d square w by dx square 0 to L equals to 0. Now this business of integration by parts, you have to sort of remember the sequence. So what is the sequence? So if you have integral over the domain, so let us say 0 to L f into g dash dx, what will this become? This will become integral 0 to L, you are transferring the derivative from g to f, there will be a change in sign, so minus f dash g dx plus fg, f into g evaluated at L minus evaluated at 0 is equal to 0. So this is the definition of, not definition, this is what we get when we do integration by parts. Okay, so we have applied it once. Now before we proceed ahead, let us apply the boundary conditions on 0 and L. Okay, now what is the form in which the weight function appears in the boundary term? Up till now it appears as v. Okay, so one of the primary variables is going to be w. Okay, so whatever is the weight function, you replace that with the primary, means field variable, you get the primary variable. So here it is w, and whenever you impose a primary variable on the boundary, that will be the essential boundary condition. Now in this problem, so at x equal to 0, w is equal to 0. So what will be v at x equal to 0?
0, sir.
0, because v is nothing but variation in w, and w is a primary variable. So if you impose w at 0 to be 0, then variation of w at 0 will be 0. So we use that information. So now substituting boundary conditions, what do we get? The integral term does not change. For the boundary term, what do we have? Sorry, there was this is a minus, it's not a plus here. Just one second. No, this is fine. Plus v into this. Now what are the boundary conditions in this problem? Boundary conditions are d by dx of ei into d square w by dx at x equal to L is minus f naught. Okay, so at L, what will this become? This becomes minus f naught, and this becomes v of L. So it will be minus v of L into f naught minus v at 0 into this at 0, but v at 0 is 0. So you simply end up with only this much. Okay, so after substituting the boundary conditions, this is what we get. Now we want to do integration by parts one more time so as to get same order derivative on w and v. So doing integration by parts one more time, what do we get? So next time when you transfer the derivative, you will get one more minus, minus of minus is plus, so you end up with d square v by dx square ei into d square w by dx square minus q naught v dx, and we'll get one more boundary term. What will that be? Minus dv by dx into ei into d square w by dx square 0 to L. This we already had equals to 0. Now in this boundary term, what is the form in which the weight function is appearing? It is appearing as also in as a first derivative dv by dx. So one more primary variable in this problem will be dw by dx. Okay, and so dw by dx we impose it to be 0 at x equal to 0. So another essential boundary condition is dw by dx equal to 0. So at x equal to 0, what will be dv by dx then? So primary variables is, so primary variables wherever they are imposed, variation of those primary variables will also be 0. So d variation of w by dx will at 0 will be 0. So after I substitute boundary condition, what will I end up with? I will end up with, now once again at L we know that ei into d square w by dx square at x equal to L is minus m naught. Okay, so essentially when I apply that, minus of minus becomes plus, and I get dv by dx at x equal to L into m naught. Okay, that's it. At 0 this is 0, so this vanishes. So what will the final weak form statement be? The weak form statement will finally be integral 0 to L this plus these two boundary terms is equal to 0. Any doubts until here? Any doubts? No doubts? Alright. So whenever we want to apply the Rayleigh-Ritz, sometimes also called simply Ritz method, the first thing to do would be to get the weak form statement of the problem. So you first determine weighted integral statement, apply integration by parts, apply the boundary conditions, and then finally you are going to get the weak form statement. Now in the weak form statement, what is the highest order derivative on v and on w? It is 2. Okay, the highest order derivative is 2. Okay, now next, fine, now we are going to apply the Rayleigh-Ritz method. Now in the Rayleigh-Ritz method, so, or for that matter in any variational method, how are we writing the solution? So we are saying we are going to get an approximate solution, okay, which we will denote by w, means subscript n of x. So in this case w subscript n x, and this w subscript n will be called it will be called n parameter. It will be called n parameter approximate solution. Okay. Now, how are we writing the n parameter approximate solution? In all the variational methods, we write it as phi naught plus summation Cj phi j of x. Okay, where j takes values of 1 to n. Okay, so this will be the n parameter approximate solution. So what do we have to choose and what do we have to determine? What do we have to choose and what do we have to determine in the n parameter approximate solution?
You can choose Phi.
Phi j.
To find out Phi.
Cj. Okay, so we have to choose phi naught and phi j, and the unknowns which we have to determine are Cj. And because there are n parameters C1, C2, C3, so on until Cn, we refer to this approximate solution as n parameter approximate solution. Okay, and capital N, choice of capital N, is within our hands. Whenever we are solving problems in one dimension, we normally use two kinds of functions for phi naught and phi j: polynomial functions and trigonometric functions. Okay, polynomial functions means 1, x, x square, x cubed, and so on. Trigonometric functions means something like sine pi x, sine 2 pi x, sine 3 pi x, like that. Now in this case, for beam bending, what do you think will be appropriate choice of approximation functions? It will be polynomial, because if you take a scale and then you try to deform it in some manner, you can see that whatever is the shape change which is occurring, it should be representable by using some sort of polynomial functions. So polynomials are a appropriate choice for the beam bending problem. Okay, for the beam bending problem. So here what we are going to do is we will choose polynomial functions for phi naught and phi I. Now in the Ritz method, phi naught should satisfy which kind of boundary conditions?
Essential boundary condition and a homogeneous form of boundary condition.
So phi naught must satisfy essential boundary conditions and phi I must satisfy homogeneous form of essential boundary conditions. Now in this problem, what are the essential boundary conditions? In this problem, what are the essential boundary conditions? Essential boundary
W at 0 equals to 0 and dw by dx at x equals to 0.
Very good. So in this particular problem, there are two primary variables, w and dw by dx. Physical meaning is one primary variable is deflection, another primary variable is slope. Now at x equal to 0, that is at the fixed end, deflection and slope are both 0. Okay, so because of that, so what should be the conditions on phi naught and phi I? So phi naught must satisfy essential boundary condition, which is phi naught at 0 and d phi naught by dx at x equal to 0 must be 0. These are the essential boundary conditions. In this problem, these are homogeneous. Okay, so phi I must satisfy phi I at 0 and d phi I by dx at 0 should be 0. Whenever you are in any confusion whether these are correct or not, simply get Wn. What will it be? Phi naught plus summation Cj phi j. That should satisfy your essential boundary condition. Fine, in this case these are the boundary condition. Now if you have to come up with a polynomial starting from the lowest order, what is the lowest order polynomial? If you are
Constant.
it will be constant. Okay, so if the lowest order is constant, okay, now if a polynomial function which should contain terms starting from lowest order and not missing any order, if you have to come up with a polynomial function which can satisfy two constraints, what should be the order of the polynomial?
One.
First order, right? So for phi naught, because it has to satisfy two constraints, okay, so what should be the form of phi naught we should consider? So phi naught we can consider as what? Some a naught plus a1 x. Okay, now in this particular case we need phi naught at 0 should be 0, means a naught would be 0, and d phi naught by dx at x equal to 0 should be 0, which will give a1 equals to 0. Okay, so phi naught will simply be equal to 0. Now because we are already considering the 0th order and first order terms in phi naught, phi I will start from which order? Phi I will start from x square, because 0th order and first order constant and x terms are already appearing in phi naught. So phi 1 will start with x square, phi 2 will be x cubed, and so on. So in general, phi I can be taken as x to the power of I plus 1. So if I is 1, phi 1 will be x square, phi 2 will be x cubed, and so on. So in this particular problem, this will be the choice for phi naught and phi I, and nth order approximate solution will simply be c1 into x square plus c2 into x cubed, so on until cn into x to the power of n plus 1. So this is Wn, and what are the weight functions? Weight functions will be in Galerkian method and Rayleigh-Ritz method. What are the weight functions? Weight functions are the same as approximation functions. Okay, so in this case weight function will simply be x to the power of I plus 1. Okay, alright. So now we have come up with the weak form, we have come up with the n parameter approximate solution, meaning we have defined phi naught and phi I. Okay, what is left to do? What is left to do is to find out CJs. Okay, so how do we do that? Now before we move ahead and find phi j, we can write our weak form statement as some bilinear function of w comma v is equal to a linear function of v, L of v. So what will be b of w comma v? So if you sort of equate this equation to the weak form we already computed, so what is b of w comma v? It will be integral 0 to L ei into d square v by dx square d square w by dx square dx. This is b of w comma v. And what is L of v? L of v will be integral 0 to L q naught v dx plus v at L into f naught minus m naught into dv by dx at x equal to L. So we simply took the weak form, put the terms involving v and w on left hand side and terms involving only v on the right hand side, and left hand side term we are calling it as b of w comma v, right hand side term we are calling it as L of v. Now let us look at some interesting properties of these functions. So first property is this function b is symmetric in v and w. So if you take, so you look at this function, if you replace v with w and w with v, you have the same function. Okay, there is no change. So first thing is it is symmetric in v and w. Second thing is it is linear in each of the functions, meaning, so if I take b of alpha 1 w1 plus alpha 2 w2, okay, comma v, meaning without changing v, if I take a linear combination of the solutions, okay, then it will simply be, okay, if instead of w, if I take alpha 1 w1 plus alpha 2 w2, where alpha 1 and alpha 2 are some real numbers, okay, they are constants, and w1 and w2 are some functions, then what will happen, the alpha 1 will come out, okay, so then I can rewrite this as alpha 1 into integral involving w1 plus alpha 2 into integral involving w2, which will be nothing but alpha 1 into b of w1 comma v plus alpha 2 into b of w2 comma v. I can do the same thing keeping w constant and alpha 1 v1 plus alpha 2 v2. Such a property means such a thing is referred to as bilinearity. Okay, so this function b is symmetric in v and w. I can interchange v and w, and it is also linear in w and linear in v. Okay, and as far as this L of v is concerned, it is linear in v. These properties are important. Okay, so the weak form can be written as b of v comma w is b of w comma v equals to L of v. Now, why are we doing this? Because now what we are going to do is, in this problem, because phi naught is 0, w, okay, just to be precise, it is wn, okay. So wn, n parameter approximate solution, we are writing it as summation cj phi j, and weight function is phi I. So what is the weak form? Weak form can now be written as b of phi I comma summation cj phi j equals to L of phi I, okay. But now this is bilinear, okay. So what can I do? I can write this particular equation as summation over j of b of phi I comma phi j into cj equals to L of phi I, okay. Now what we are going to do is, we will come up with a notation of kij. So we are writing kij as equal to b of phi I comma phi j, and fi, capital F subscript I, as L of phi I, okay, L of phi I. Now if we do that, then what will be the weak form statement? The weak form statement then becomes summation over j kij cj equals to fi, okay, is equal to fi. Let me f subscript I, alright. Now what is this in matrix form? See, I takes also values of 1 to n. So this is nothing but, for I equals to 1, it is k11 c1 plus k12 c2 plus k13 c3 so on until k1 n cn equals to f1. For I equals to 2, this equation is k21 c1 plus k22 c2 so on equal to f2, and so on. This set of equations can be written in matrix form as matrix K of size n cross n into vector C of size n cross 1 is equal to vector F of size n cross 1. So in the Rayleigh-Ritz method, when we are evaluating the weak form statement for capital N number of weight functions, the resulting equations can be written in matrix form as Kc equals to F. Now what is it which is known or which can be determined, and what are the unknowns in this matrix equation?
CD matrix is unknown.
Okay, so what can be estimated are K and F, and what are unknowns or what is unknown is C, okay. So the weak form statement is Kc equals to F, where K is called stiffness matrix, F is called force vector, okay. Yeah, so here what are the entries of this stiffness matrix Kij? So in this case it is 0 to L Ei d square phi I by dx square, d square phi j by dx square dx. What is phi I? X to the power I plus 1. Phi j is x to the power j plus 1. If you evaluate it, okay, so it is a simple calculus. So you evaluate it, then you will get, taking e times I to be constant, we get kij is equal to this. Ei into I into j into I plus 1 into j plus 1 by I plus j minus 1 into L to the power of I plus j minus 1. So if you evaluate kij, you get this, okay. And what is fi? Fi is L of phi I, L of x to the power I plus 1. So if you do that, then you get fi can be evaluated to be this. Now once you know what are these entries of stiffness matrix and force vector, then you can determine the Cj for different values of n. So what is the simplest approximation we can come up with? How do we get different levels of approximation?
By taking n equal to 1.
So simplest approximate solution will be for capital N equal to 1, which is one parameter approximate solution, okay. And we can increase the complexity of approximation by increasing the value of capital N. So for capital N equals to 1, what will happen? What will be the values for I and j?
1 and 1.
I will be 1 and j will be 1, okay. So once you put I equals to 1 and j equals to 1, so for capital N equals to 1, you can see that k11 will be 4 times ei times L and f1 will be this expression, okay. So c1, what is c1? f1 by k11. When you have only one term, then it is simply c1 is this, and what will be w? What will be the one parameter approximate solution? The one parameter approximate solution will be c1 phi1, which is c1 into x square. So for n equals to 1, what will be the solution? It will be one parameter approximate solution to the problem will be 1 by 4 ei into this. What I am doing is into x square, but instead of x square I am interested in writing x by L square. So here I will get another L square, okay. So the one parameter approximate solution will be this. Now 1 is easy, okay, but if you want to go to higher order and still get some analytical solution, okay, can now doing all these computations by hand is not easy, and also you can make lots of mistakes. So what is our option? So for analytical analysis, okay, beyond a certain level, you can make use of a software known as Mathematica, okay. So I am going to show you how to use this particular software in the coming few minutes.